An entitled couple lied about me to my manager, claiming that I was rude to them and that I rushed them out of our restaurant. And as a result, I'm now in trouble with my main manager, as my job might be on the line after this massive lie from these customers. And right now, I am panicking and I seriously don't know what to do. Okay, so I don't even know where to begin. Today, one of my managers took me aside and told me a table I had on Friday night called the restaurant today to complain that their food was cold. They also said that they didn't like how their steak was cooked, and I apparently refused to send it back to get recooked, with these people also claiming that I rushed them and I was overall very rude to them, forcing my head manager to give them a $200 food voucher, and that he is obviously very upset at me. Now, when my manager told me this, I was absolutely baffled. I worked the past 4 days and received very few complaints about food. I originally thought it was a table that didn't know a side dish was served cold, so I gave them a new side, but it wasn't them. So my manager let me know the day and the table, and in all honesty, I hardly remember them. The woman was the one who complained on the phone, but I only remember what the man looked like. I remember the woman was unsure about how her steak was cooked, and I offered to take it back and get it recooked to her liking, which is our restaurant policy, by the way, but she said it was okay and continued to eat her food. They never complained about any cold food to me. They gave me zero indication anything was wrong. I'm also very upset that they said I rushed them, because part of my spiel when I give them the check is to straight up tell them that there is no rush, that they can pay for their bill whenever they're ready, and that they can take as long as they want. The table also tipped me the full 20%, indicating they didn't take issue at the time with my service. It's known for my restaurant that they'll give food vouchers if a customer's unhappy about virtually anything about the food, which by the way definitely is taken advantage of. I can take accountability for my actions and own up when I mess up. I have only been at this job a couple of months and did struggle initially. I had a major mess up in relation to how a patron wanted their steak prepared about a month ago now, and was essentially told that I'm on thin ice and I need to straighten up my act. So now I've been very conscientious about everything that I do. I told all of this to the manager working today, and she said that she would vouch for me. However, tomorrow I'm working with my head manager, and I imagine I'll get pulled to the side again to talk about it. I mean, what do I say? I don't want to tell my manager that I think these people were lying for free food, but that is in fact exactly what I think. I mean, how can I advocate for myself without putting these people down? I seriously feel like I'm going to be fighting to keep my job tomorrow, all because these people wanted free food, and now I'm in such a bad spot, and I seriously don't know what to do. Wow, that's a really terrible situation to be stuck in. Like, for starters, I can definitely see a customer lying just to get free food. Like, I'm sure that happens all the time in your business, and it seriously would not surprise me if they did that to you in this instance. And this is not some kind of small voucher, by the way. This is a $200 voucher. Like, this is some serious money being spent at this restaurant. And from the sounds of it, it doesn't sound like this is some kind of like chain restaurant, but it really seems like this is some higher end place where like perfection is expected. So for these customers to really look at you, someone who is very passionate about what you do and someone who works really hard to do a good job, and just basically lie and be like, oh yeah, they treated us like garbage. It's like, what are you talking about? You're like ruining my life right now. You can't do that. So honestly, if I was in your shoes, I would be completely honest with everything that happened. I would literally stand up for myself, because from the sounds of it, you might be the only one doing that. Sure, the other manager would vouch for you and try and give you a good word, but in my opinion, I think your own testimony against these people and basically detailing out everything that you did do for these people, I think that all of that can go a long way in hopefully keeping your job, because these people were clearly lying. It's not like you have a track record of being rude to customers or anything like that. You've clearly done your best, and it seems like you've only had one minor mishap with a patron in the past. So hopefully with all these things in consideration, you can still hopefully have your job the next time you meet with your main manager. Because honestly, from the sounds of it, it really seems like these patrons are trying to work the system. And for you to get caught up inside of that, honestly, in my opinion, is completely unfair. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. Also, go to amithejerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories. My entitled parents are refusing to allow me to move out at the age of 21, and instead are trying to force me to get a college degree at a university I don't even want to go to. And at this point, I'm at my breaking point, and I now seriously don't know what to do. Okay, so ever since I finished school, I was forced to go to the high school of their choice. And finally, I was forced and partially manipulated at 19 years old to go to a university of their choice, studying something that they chose. And right now, I'm working a full-time job of my choice this time, of which they don't even know about. I mean, they think that I'm going to university, but instead I go to work. I am on the second year in this university, and as you can tell, I don't really go or study that much. I have so many failed exams, and I think they will expel me soon. So now, my plan is to leave this awful university, and then finally move out of my parents' house. I can't afford everything, such as food and rent and utilities, but the only problem is that my parents just don't let me leave. In the first year of university about a year ago, I managed to move out alone with a reason for studying for university. Well, about 1 week after I moved out, I told my parents that I will abandon this university and I will get a job. And when I said that, this led into a lot of fights, several thorough phone calls, as well as daily phone calls in the morning and night. And they would also come by my place a lot of the times just to argue. Eventually, after all this stuff going on for 2 months, they convinced me to come back home and resume university. Furthermore, I can do the same thing, telling them the truth and leave, but that would lead my parents into having more problems mentally, since they are so obsessed with the idea of me getting a college degree, which I do not want to. I don't care that we fight or whatever, but I can't stand the idea that they're taking antidepressants daily, and they're using this as a manipulation tactic just to make me come back to them. And right now, I seriously don't know what to do. Okay, so this is a really weird situation because it really seems like your parents are just trying to manipulate the situation and force you into something that you don't want to do. For context, the original poster is 21 years old, and honestly, at that age, if you do not want to go to college, then nobody can make you stay in there and get a degree that you don't want to get. And trust me, I hear exactly what you're saying. Maybe your parents have a lot of mental health issues and they're using that against you in some kind of way, but at the end of the day, no matter what they say or do, they can't force you to go to college if you don't want to go. If you want to work instead out of high school and do that and make money that way, then in my opinion, there's nothing wrong with that. But you've basically made it very clear that no, you don't want to go to university and you don't want to be around your parents and live with them. I mean, I know if I was in your shoes, I would be very miserable dealing with my parents every single day, especially if this is how they're gonna act. So hopefully this all gets worked out for you, because what you're describing right now does not sound normal. And I seriously think it's not normal for them to try and force you to go to college, especially when you definitely have made it clear that you do not want to do that. My partner bought a puppy against my will right before we had our newborn. And now, as a result, that dog is an absolute menace. And at this point, I seriously don't know what to do. Here's what happened. So me and my partner have been together for around 11 months, and we conceived our beautiful baby boy really early into our relationship. She had a medium-sized dog and a cat, and I knew that they were part of the package since they were here before I was. Now, she is rather an impulsive buyer. I'm not the greatest myself, but I at least can admit it and include her on any big decisions. There was many times during the pregnancy that she insisted that we get a kitten or a puppy, but I always said no. I would say, let's see how things are when the baby is here. I knew that just having a newborn wasn't going to be easy. Anyways, in November when I was working in a remote location, she called me and said that there were these bad people that were going to get rid of this German Shepherd puppy on the side of the road, and that they said they would trade a puppy for an Xbox. She said that she wanted to foster the dog for 2 weeks until she finds new owners. I told her that I knew she would get attached, but she said that she wouldn't. I also reinforced that it would be extremely difficult to take care of our baby along with this new puppy. I told her that I cannot control the decisions that she makes, but that I hope that she would make a smart decision. Well, long story short, she got the dog. Now we have our newborn born late December, and honestly, this puppy has become a nuisance. The puppy steals the baby's clothing, it barks, urinates, and poops literally everywhere, and she does very little to prevent it. It also has chewed up most of his pacifiers and bottles. I only found out because I asked her where they all went, and she said that she didn't know. But shortly after I saw him chewing on a bottle, she was covering for the puppy and only admitted to it once I caught him in the act. I get extremely irritated because she just lets him get away with everything, and all I end up doing is disciplining and cleaning up after the puppy while working full time and doing most of the house tasks. When I get frustrated, she tells me that it's all in my head and that I shouldn't let it bother me because I'm allowing myself to get mad. I mean, I don't know what to do. I feel like this has become extremely disrespectful as she's made a decision that I didn't agree with, and now makes me feel bad for being frustrated and resentful about something I warned her about. I mean, should I leave? She won't budge on the dog, and she says that if I do that, I'll be ruining our son's home because of the dog. dog. I mean, do I just stay for my son? The thought of leaving my baby boy makes me very sick to my stomach, and at this point, I seriously don't know what to do. Honestly, I'm really with the original poster on this one, because that child takes a major precedent over that dog. Now, obviously, I don't think it's smart to leave that kid behind and leave the relationship or something like that, but I do think for the sake of everybody else's sanity, that dog has got to be rehomed somewhere else. And I'm right there with the original poster. He literally said, hey, we have a baby on the way. Let's not get a dog as well on top of having a newborn baby. Because you know what? They're right. That baby is already going to be a handful, and the last thing you need is literally another mouth to feed that is only going to add more stress on the situation. So honestly, I don't think you're in the wrong, and I think the way that your partner bought that dog without you having a say in what happens, honestly, is completely unacceptable. An entitled jerk breaks into my house, claiming that he has stuff in my garage that he needs to get. And as a result, this guy got arrested, and he got charged with breaking and entering. Here's what happened. So Saturday night, the missus and I are lying in bed, trying to go to sleep when I hear some noise from the back door, with the storm door opening and slamming shut. I'm not fully asleep yet, so I put on some pants and a shirt that I can find, and I grab my pump action weapon, if you know what I mean. We move to the mountainside, and most of the area is still wooded, and living in such conditions makes wild animals a legitimate issue. Things like bears, coyotes, raccoons, and bobcats, and those are just to name a few. So as I'm moving to the back door, I hear a window break in the back garage. I look around and I see someone breaking into my garage. I then scream for my wife to call the sheriff's office. Around here, 911 doesn't work well for break-ins, as we are connected with a couple of counties, so it does get confusing for them, and we decided that a quicker response by calling them directly would probably work. I'm now in go mode, thinking that some junkie is trying to score some tools for some quick cash. I got out of my house and I noticed this person's truck still running, so I did the only thing I could think of and took the key out of the truck and I put it in my pocket waiting for the deputies to show up. Fast forward, and it took them about 20 minutes to show up. One was state police and the other was local sheriff deputy who were doing radar 10 miles up the road, and my wife and I knew the both of them. With my weapon in hand, I told them that someone was in the garage, and I haven't approached it yet, but I do have the key of the guy's truck. So they go in and they deal with the situation, and they find this dude passed out on an old bench seat, which was for an old truck I have by my tool bench. They wake him up and then they arrest him with little to no issue other than him screaming profanities at them. They told me that I can press charges and come in on Monday to file the paperwork, stating that he's not getting out anytime soon, and on top of him breaking in, he's being charged with a DUI. So yesterday, I spent the day traveling to fix the window that this jerk broke, since there are no stores that are open on Sunday in my local area. While in my travels, I'm still fuming at the fact that I'm having to do this repair on a piece of junk door from the 70s. My wife was telling me to maybe let him go with a warning, but I'm having none of that. So this morning, I went to the sheriff's office, and the same deputy was there that arrested this jerk. So I decided to ask him how the ride was with that dude in the back of his car. And this is basically what the officer said. The officer said, "Why did you break into the garage?" And this guy said, "I was trying to get my stuff back, but someone changed the lock." The officer then said, "You know they purchased that place from Kevin 2 years ago, right?" Now, when the officer said that, this jerk said, "What? That doesn't give them the right to change the lock without telling me." But the officer responded by saying, "Well, yeah, they can. You haven't been in that house in like 4 years, and I was the one who got you out of that house for getting into a fight. That's twice I get to arrest you on the same property." This guy then said, "But he shouldn't be entitled to change the locks though. Where else am I supposed to go?" Now, in terms of the property itself, we purchased it from a guy named Kevin, who is a school board member, and gave us a decent deal on the property. He had the property as a rental for his nephew for a few years, and when his nephew started walking in his dad's footsteps by getting drunk and getting in fights all the time, he evicted him from the property 2 years before we purchased it. When he evicted him, he emptied the contents of the garage as all scrap metal. Now, Kevin had other renters on the property after, but he sold it to us because he didn't want the responsibility of it anymore. Well, this guy's being charged with trespassing, as well as criminal trespassing, breaking and entering, driving under the influence, as well as property damage of less than $500. And honestly, with all things considered, I seriously hope I never have to deal with this guy ever again. Wow, the guy in this story who broke into your house is so far out of line. Like seriously, there is no good excuse for breaking into somebody's house, whether you know them or not. Like that's a really good way of getting hurt, or at the very least, just getting arrested. So good for the original poster for getting the police involved and getting this guy off of his property. Because in no way way are you required to let him come on your property looking for stuff that he left behind? That is honestly weird, and nobody should ever have to deal with that. Am I the jerk for supporting my grieving best friend, especially after my girlfriend just had our first baby? Here's what happened. So my girlfriend and I have been dating for the past 2 years, and 2 months ago we welcomed a beautiful baby boy in our lives. I'm a 20-year-old male and my girlfriend is 19 years old. Things have been kind of hectic, but we have been managing. And yes, before you say anything, I realize that we're very young to have a kid, but we're in love with each other and we're both very mature for our age. So we believe we're ready to start our family. My girlfriend chose to keep the baby, if you know what I mean, and this is all for religious reasons. And we have financial support from my parents, so we don't have to worry about money. Now, I have been best friends with this other girl who's also 19 for about a decade. She is kind and funny and pretty, but we practically grew up together, so I've only ever seen her as like a sibling. She has supported me through thick and thin, and we have been there for each other during our hardest times. Around 3 weeks ago, after my son was born, her 13-year-old sister tragically passed away. She was absolutely heartbroken and was struggling to cope with the loss. Her sister was the only person in her family that she had a good relationship with, and my friend is blaming herself for not being there for her. She has a distant relationship with her mother. Her friends from school now live very far away, and she's quite introverted, so she hasn't made a lot of new close friends. So I'm pretty much the only support she has. I went to the funeral with her back in our hometown. I bring her favorite food to make sure that she eats something. I message her every day to see if she's doing well. She's battled with depression before, and I'm terrified of losing her too. I hang out with her a couple of times a week. We go on walks, we watch movies together, we sometimes read together at the library, or even do some baking together, as well as painting with her, playing video games, and going on picnics. And these are all activities that she used to love doing with her sister. We reminisce about all the fun memories we had with her sister, and it's never become anything more than platonic. Apart from spending time with my friend, or in class and doing assignments and studying, or even at work, I spend the rest of my time supporting my family, helping with taking care of chores around the house, as well as bottle feeding and bathing my son. But recently, I've been getting into arguments with my girlfriend. She's been suspicious of me spending all my time with my friend, knowing full well that I'm simply supporting her. In the first month after our son's birth, I did everything I could to make motherhood easier for her, and I still would have if it wasn't for someone I love and care about deeply going through such a hard time. I have been completely honest to my girlfriend about helping my friend, yet she started accusing me of neglecting her and our son and saying that I only cared about my friend because I had a crush on her. I empathize and understand that she's having a stressful time adjusting to parenthood, especially after an unplanned pregnancy, but I think I should be allowed to support my best friend with her grief. So honestly, am I the jerk in this scenario? What should I do? Yes, you are absolutely the jerk in this scenario for several reasons. First of all, I feel really bad for your best friend's sister passing away, and honestly, that is awful. I really do feel for her situation, and honestly, that is a terrible thing to go through. But literally, it does sound like you have a second girlfriend with this best friend. Like, think about it. You're describing her as funny and pretty and kind, but you always backtrack by saying, oh, it's just platonic. Meanwhile, you're practically dating this lady while your girlfriend is solo taking care of this baby. It honestly sounds like your schedule is already incredibly busy, so the fact that you're trying to find more time to spend time with this best friend of yours instead of spending time with your girlfriend and your baby honestly is weird to me. Like, if my friend's sister passed away, I would be there for her. I would even show up for the funeral, which I think is a fantastic thing to do, but I wouldn't then spend every waking moment with her instead of spending time with my girlfriend and my son. It almost seems like you're using your best friend's sister's passing as some kind of like license or permission to spend all your time with this girl. And maybe you don't see that you're actually doing that, but trust me, from my perspective, it really looks like that. So hopefully you can get this figured out, because honestly, this is not a good look. Because from the outside looking in, it really seems like you have two girlfriends. And I think it might be time to take care of the one that just gave birth to your son, instead of the other one that clearly is a little bit more than just being friends. Am I the jerk for canceling my sister's visit, even though her therapist said that she needed a vacation? Here's what happened. I want to start off by saying that all names in this next story are fake. About 3 years ago, my stepsister Daphne got pregnant. She and her husband Jim were thrilled, but found out at the 20-week scan that the baby had a congenital condition and would be born severely disabled. Daphne decided to keep going with the pregnancy despite Jim's protest, and eventually they split up, with the both of them eventually getting back together in time for their son Liam to be born. And today he is now 2 years old. Over the last 2 years, Daphne's and Jim's mental mental health has declined significantly. Daphne used to be a positive and pleasant person, but now it's impossible to have a conversation with her. She is malicious, envious, and flies off the handle at any perceived slight. When I was having my child, I didn't speak to her for most of the pregnancy because of how bitter and narcissistic she was. We don't live close to Daphne, so rarely we see her in person, but I heard she was getting worse from our parents. In early November, Daphne had a mental breakdown. She trashed Liam's room completely and vandalized Jim's car in a fit of rage. This was enough to finally get her moved up the waiting list for mental health services, and she was able to start therapy. She reached out to me during this time, and we had a few conversations, and I invited her and Jim to visit my husband and I for a vacation at our beach house in March. Then we saw Daphne and Jim over Christmas, and it was awful. Daphne could keep herself in check for a couple of hours, but then she would revert back to her old self. She would swear constantly, and while I know Liam can't understand her, I think swearing at kids isn't okay. Whenever I express concern for her, she would just snap that I need to get off my high horse about having a perfect child. Jim was snapping at her constantly. He would also constantly ask to hold or play with my child, to the point that it was honestly getting so annoying. Overall, the whole Christmas break was just the whole family being anxious over the situation. My husband finally said a week ago that he didn't want Daphne and Jim visiting, and I agreed. I called Daphne and I said that something had come up with my husband's work and we needed to cancel the trip. Well, Daphne was furious. Apparently her therapist had been saying how good this break would be for her and that I owed her this one thing to help her. Eventually she gave up and said that I was a horrible person for pulling the rug out from underneath her, and then she hung up. I feel bad if I'm derailing her recovery, and even my parents think I shouldn't have canceled, which is making me rethink things. They saw how absolutely horrible she was to me over Christmas, and they saw how obsessed Jim became with my child, and they still think that I should have put that aside. And they're not normally the keep the peace type of people, so maybe I really am wrong here. So honestly, am I the jerk in this scenario? What should I do? No, you are not the jerk in this situation. Your sister and her husband are weird, your sister has violent outbursts and she's angry all the time, and honestly, that trip sounds like it would have been a nightmare if you had to go on it. So no, you are not the jerk. Anyone who says you are is completely out of touch, because Daphne's behavior absolutely should not be tolerated. When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications. To finish listening to all the stories, check out the playlist at the top of the description. And if you want some chill music to put on in the background, check out easymode.com. If you like Am I the Jerk, subscribe to Am I the Genius. Everything will be linked down below in the description.